Okay, and in terms of so I think you pretty much outlined the way in the shift from shift from on-prem to cloud, but I think everyone would say it's probably more of a hybrid world. So people have a mixture of environments, and it clearly is impacting the BCDR sort of architecture decisions. But it'd be good to understand from your own point of view. I think that you've got the flex spend model and how that supports customers transitioning from physical server backups to Azure or I guess any other cloud environments. Yeah.
Yeah, so FlexSpend was built for that purpose specifically because so many organizations now are in that sort of dilemma of, do I replace the server? Do I then, rather than replacing the server at the end of its life or in a situation where the disks go bang or whatever it might be, do I use that as the opportune moment to pivot to that, OpEx based costing in cloud hosted infrastructure or public cloud or whatever it might be? And Kaseya is partner first. So we built this dynamic process of allowing organizations to take the considerations of their contractual commitments on their backup off the table. So we don't want organizations to look at decisions around what they do with their production environment based on their contractual exposure on their backup. So let's say an organization buys a 3-year contract on their backup solution or their business continuity solution, and their servers go bang within 18 months. They don't want to then decide, oh, well, we're gonna have to pay to replace the servers because we've got the rest of this contract on our backup. We want them to have the dynamism to be able to say, well, actually, this is a great point in time to move to infrastructure as a service in Azure or running these systems in AWS or whatever it might be. So absolutely, Kaseya implemented a flexibility around its contractual processes to allow organizations to pivot the spend with Kaseya aligning to their operational requirements. So now we're in a world where if an organization implements a backup solution for on-premise infrastructure, and in 18 months, they no longer need that, but they need business continuity for Microsoft Azure, we will move that spend. And in the backup space specifically, we'll retain all the backups as well, because retention is a really important topic for most organizations. They have to have that historic versioning of that data set. So organizations now have the dynamism to be able to move their financial commitments and retain that peace of mind that they've still got those copies of that data. Now, Kaseya's obviously gone beyond that now, so we've implemented FlexSpend for everything, more or less. So now we're in a world where, if an organization is still running on-premise Exchange, a bit of a rarity these days, but let's say they are, and that server goes bang, and they no longer need that server infrastructure at all, but need SaaS-based application protection, we can move that spend to there. It doesn't matter where it goes. And we're working with thousands and thousands of partners around the world to dynamically help them realign and make sure that the solutions they're receiving from Kaseya are the best solutions to enable them to provide best-in-class services to their customers.
Okay, and in terms of the MSPs, helping their customers, what are the challenges they face when they are moving, customers' production environments to the public cloud? And clearly, there's still, they want to maintain recovery SLAs as much as possible. So, and I think we all know of the migration, horror story, shall we say? But but what are the challenges for MSPs when they're helping customers, make that transition?
Yeah, I mean, what once worked locally doesn't necessarily work in the cloud in the same way, and that's something that we've seen countless times, and that's why we support organizations in running disaster recovery testing in the cloud on our local backup solutions, because obviously what runs in the office really well, spin it up in the cloud, breaks, pieces are missing, what have you. So I think from a transitional standpoint, ensuring that you've got retention of systems locally during that transition period is of paramount importance. I also will always advocate for organizations implementing their backup strategy first. Because again, no amount of front end systems, incredibly efficient production environments will offset the situation in a world where something goes wrong. So, where data becomes corrupted or there is a cyber attack of some sort, if they've not implemented that backup strategy first, then obviously that's going to become a major problem for that business. Um, we're in an incredibly turbulent world now where organizations are moving to the cloud and some are moving back and the realization of cost efficiencies that they thought they'd get when they moved to the cloud aren't exactly what they thought it would be. So that data and those production environments are moving all over the place now. So regardless of where you're stepping to and where you're stepping from, having a mechanism to both recover data from where you were and where you're going to as the primary focus needs to be in place. And then ensuring that that migration process aligns to those backup and recovery expectations. Because what you don't want to do is go from having a production environment locally with hourly backups and a recovery point objective of 2 hours with the human element, a recovery time objective of an hour, and then move to a cloud-based infrastructure stack where actually it might take you days to recover because you haven't thought about the fact that actually I still need to adhere to this for my cyber insurance company, for my compliance standards, whatever it might be. So it's a whole mapped out process, but backup first needs to be the mindset, because if you don't have that recoverability element and something goes wrong, it's a really, really bad situation to be in. So we're seeing an absolute explosion in solutions specifically built for public cloud now, because as you can imagine, the adoption of public cloud is becoming massive. Data's growing at a rate we've never seen before, and more organizations are moving to an OpEx-based model across all of their IT. So we're working with managed service providers on productization of services, and that comes from endpoint to SaaS applications and public cloud. But more and more we're seeing organizations look at the inbuilt backup systems for these public cloud providers and them suddenly coming to the realization that, well, all my eggs are in one basket. A lot of organizations use the same credentials for their production environment and their recovery environment. There's all sorts of risks and vulnerabilities in not leveraging, air-gapped third-party protection systems for those production environments. So in the same way that you wouldn't just plug another server into your existing server and use that as your backup with no partition between them, using your public cloud provider as your backup provider for your production environments again comes at a risk. So every small to medium business and small to medium enterprise should be leveraging the expertise of the managed service providers across the world, because they're incredibly well versed in what steps need to be taken to offset the risk associated with these massive data transformations and data migrations to public cloud. But again, always ensuring that we lead with a backup first mentality to ensure that we've always got that safety net, for want of a better phrase.
Okay, and in such a sort of volatile, disruptive client environment, how important or how helpful is it to have commercial flexibility? Obviously, we talked about flex spend, a little earlier, but more generally in terms of things like pause, extend, co-term, low watermark, billing, etc. I mean, how does that help MSPs remain competitive in this, as I say, this fast-moving landscape?
Yeah, I mean, managed service providers their primary focus is ensuring that the services they're providing their customers is best in class, and restrictions around the commercial policies they have with their vendors shouldn't get in the way of that. So there needs to be a dynamic relationship in terms of the technology that's being used, because the technology requirements change so rapidly that organizations are pivoting from using, specific types of endpoints to where they're hosting their servers, to what level of security requirements they have to have in place based on their compliance needs or what have you. So having that flexibility alleviates the focus on that when it comes to decisions made for their customers or internally. So we see it as a huge focus for us in our sort of partner first pledge, in terms of ensuring that there is there are as many dynamics in place to ensure that organizations aren't looking at that as a hindrance and actually an enabler of their provision of services to their customers. So, we can provide this to you for this relatively short period of time because we've got this level of flexibility from our partner that allows us to do that. Because historically, an organization that needed urgent protection for a system for a short period of time was left weighing up, well, contractually, I'm going to have to sign up for a long-term contract. We can't do that. Do we just go without the protection for that period of time at a massive risk, but then we're not, exposed to this massive contract, and we don't want that. We want to support organizations to protect every small to medium business on the planet by facilitating best-in-class services with the flexibility that aligns to their business needs. So that's why contract pause and extend, catastrophic loss, flex spend have been so well received by the industry, because the managed service providers we work with understand that we're looking at their businesses and the way that they're transacting with their customers and aligning to those situations as an enabler rather than just a provider. We want to be true partners of the managed service providers we're working with.